I'm Jason, the world is yours, and today we have a story about former UFC middleweight champion Robert Whittaker thinks Khamzat Chimaev is a terrible fight for Colby Covington. Robert Whittaker doesn't give Colby Covington too much of a chance in a fight with Khamzat Chimaev, with UFC President Dana White saying Khamzat, who is 12-0 in MMA, 6-0 in the UFC, versus Colby Covington, who is 17-3 in MMA, 12-3 in the UFC, could serve as a co-main event to a potential trilogy bout between current welterweight champion Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman. Robert Whittaker thinks Khamzat would have his way with Covington. Whittaker pointed to Covington's two losses to ex-champion Kamaru Usman, in which he was knocked down multiple times in what were predominantly kickboxing fights between the two elite wrestlers. Stylistically, fight-wise, I think that's a terrible fight for Colby Covington, Robert Whittaker told Submission Radio. Terrible, because you saw him with Usman, that anybody Colby can't just relentlessly spam takedowns on. It becomes a kickboxing fight and a striking match. And I think Covington's great at what he does, but he's not a kickboxer. He's not a striker by trade. That doesn't come naturally to him. His presser style and wrestling style is what comes naturally to him. Khamzat can counter wrestle Colby Covington. That's okay. That's wouldn't it be interesting if Colby Covington took Khamzat down? Right? I wouldn't. I'm not gonna go and say Khamzat can just counter wrestle Colby Covington. I'm not gonna go that far yet. Let's go back to what Robert Whittaker is saying. Khamzat's a big dude with long range and a lot of reach, and his striking is nothing ridiculously crazy, but it's put together at a high level, and he integrates that with the threat of his wrestling and grappling takedowns stupendously. So I think Khamzat for Covington is a bad matchup. When Chimaev was asked about a potential fight with Robert Whittaker after his UFC 279 catchweight win over Kevin Holland, Chimaev said he'd rather train with Whittaker than fight him, and Whittaker is all for that idea. Right? That's interesting. I don't know him. Okay, this is Whittaker talking about Khamzat, I believe. I don't know him personally, like his character or anything like that, but skill-wise and the skill sets he brings into the octagon when he fights, they're very high caliber, high tier, Whittaker said. And I'm a believer that iron sharpens iron. I think everyone believes that in MMA. And if me and him got together and started working our skill sets and mentalities, it's a scary prospect, isn't it? The answer is yes. He continued, I'm not going to rule it out. There's all possibility in the world that at this point I could one day get together with him and train. Of course they should train. What would be the reason why they wouldn't get together and train? Perhaps it's not like it's not like they're going to fight each other anytime soon. I don't think so. Perhaps Robert Whittaker could link up with Chimaev ahead of his pivotal middleweight clash with Paulo Costa on February 12th. You know what? That's interesting. Okay, February 12th at UFC 284 on February 12th. Huh? What? In Perth, Australia. That is kind of interesting, that because Chimaev does have like legitimate beef with Paulo Costa, right? They got into it ahead of his match at UFC 279. I think was that in Vegas? I can't remember. It may have been in Vegas. But I know they got into something Chimaev and Costa did, and now we have Robert Whittaker putting it out there that he's willing to train with Chimaev. And obviously you would imagine Chimaev wants to stick it to Costa. And even if he does train with Robert Whittaker, and let's say Costa defeats Robert Whittaker, then Chimaev, easy, you could walk right into that fight. So I would not be surprised. We're here in October. I would definitely not be surprised if Chimaev and Robert Whittaker start, get some training sessions, and that would be super dope. We still have to figure out what's going on with Chimaev. He did not make the welterweight fight. He didn't make the welterweight fight versus Nick Diaz because he was Deacon Nick Diaz versus Nate Diaz. He didn't make the welterweight fight versus Nate Diaz at 279 because he came in overweight. So I don't know. I heard something about his manager saying that he wanted to go up to middleweight, right? So I don't know really what's going on with Chimaev. I know everybody wants to see him fight Colby Covington, but what if he doesn't make weight versus at welterweight anymore? Maybe he wants to head up to 185 pounds. I mean, I think his first fight in the UFC was at middleweight. Now, I know he's had a few fights at middleweight, maybe 2 fights at middleweight, but most of his fights have been at welterweight. So, but like I said, his last fight, he did not make weight versus Nate Diaz, not Nick Diaz, versus Nate Diaz at UFC 279, which is why he had to fight Kevin Holland at a catchweight fight. So I don't know what's going on between Robert Whittaker. I mean, not with Robert Whittaker, but Chimaev and Colby Covington. What's Colby Covington doing? What's his next fight? Is he? I can't remember. His last fight was his Jorge Masvidal, but that was a few months ago. But we haven't heard any news from Colby Covington as far as a fight since then. And like I said, we have to see what's going on with Chimaev in the year 2023. Will he be trying to stay down at welterweight, or does he go up to middleweight and fight the winner of Robert Whittaker and Paulo Costa? Or does Chimaev, show up next in a few weeks, because we have the middleweight championship on the line. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira, that fight is happening in basically 2 weeks. I would think that would be a good marketing, for Khamzat Chimaev to be there for that fight, right? And maybe call out the winner of that fight, something like that. I don't hate that idea. We have to see. Like I said, I don't know if Chimaev is going back to welterweight. So this Colby Covington fight may not even happen. But Dana White is throwing it out there that he probably may want to throw Chimaev versus Colby Covington on the undercard. Not the is it the undercard? Would it be considered not the undercard? Definitely not the undercard. As basically as a co-main event to Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman, but that fight hasn't been signed yet either. So I mean, there's so many moving parts for this story. But we'll see. Obviously, 2023 is going to be literally insane for the UFC. You have John Jones probably coming back, Conor McGregor probably coming back, Masvidal probably coming back, Covington coming back. So the beginning of the year, we'll see what happens, and we'll see if my idea of Chimaev showing up for the UFC fight between Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira and challenging the winner of that at middleweight. I'd rather see Chimaev go up to middleweight instead of risk it and not be able to make weight at middleweight. But let me know your opinion of this whole crazy mess. Who do you have between Chimaev and Colby Covington? Do you agree with Robert Whittaker that it's a terrible matchup for Colby Covington? Or do you think it's a bad matchup for Chimaev? Or do you agree with me that I think Chimaev should go up to middleweight and call out the winner of Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira next in basically 2 weeks? I'm Jason. The world is yours. Today we have a pretty fun story, matchmaking fun story for us UFC fans. We had a story today about Robert Whittaker thinks Khamzat Chimaev is a terrible fight for Colby Covington. Thank you for watching.